remember or didn't even think about. But as you say, you do have this. And I don't, obviously Dahmer's not an example of anything healthy. He's not an example of healthy sexuality, hetero or homo, anywhere along the spectrum. But yes, here he is. He's a white guy. So he still gets a little more privilege in expressing that. However, he's going to express it, right? And of course, I made reference to the fact that he was raping his roommates in the army, right? Which is obviously unacceptable, but yet he's still being allowed to skate on that. And then, there's the question of, you bring up the exact points that the cops had a victim. And that's a famous story about how that happened, about how they just didn't want to talk about it, right? All right, lovers spat, don't want to get involved in it, don't want to do the paperwork. And you're right, it is interesting hearing that perspective again. And something I forgot about, right, was, of course, the impact on the Black community. That here suddenly was something that was touching not only on a fear that, this had been more the fear of white America, right? Someone's going to do something terrible to my wife, my sister, possibly me. But then there's also, as you say, there is the fact that Dahmer was out cruising and picking these places up at same-sex sites. And sort of the discomfort that then comes for the victim, that can potentially come for the victims from there, right? I mean, they just, all these things that the victims' families are having to process and having to deal with, right? Why was he there? He was there for this. He was there for what? And he ended up dead. Just so many mixed emotions and so many hard things.
Especially around that period, even post-civil rights. The Black community, not big, still debatably to this day, not big supporters of gay rights. So to a lot of people, it started a really ugly debate in the Black community. I think in Milwaukee. It was mostly Wisconsin. It started a really ugly debate, but they wanted justice. But to a lot of other people, like they were gay, like the gay stuff that they do, like we're not going to touch that. We're not going to throw the civil rights movement behind that, because otherwise, why aren't these hate killings? Like this man was targeting gay Black young men.
Right.
Like these were absolutely, or could easily be defined as hate killings. And so for, at this, especially at that time, it was one of the many things, and then, AIDS, but it was one of the many things that was really dangerous about, the underground nature of gay culture.
Well, and it was certainly something he could do, and he felt he could get away with, right? It goes to all of that on several levels, right?
He's not even killing, because at least in the other cases, you're killing a white girl, like, oh, you're killing a white child, so on and so forth. I mean, a Black gay person, I mean, to most of America at the time, that was less than refuse. Why are you even arresting him? So for them, it really meant we have to take stock of this, and holy shit, we have to address the fact that he killed human beings.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The funny thing is, like, if you look at the through line between when he was finally arrested and then the subsequent trials, and, find out who the victims were, having been in the church involved in churches at the time in both Massachusetts, North Carolina, and Kentucky, I was able to hear the maturation of the conversation, because Greg is nailing something that really doesn't get reported on a whole lot, where the conversation was moving in a positive direction, but painfully in the direction of, how do we protect ourselves and march towards equality still, if we are going to pigeonhole and take out people of our own background and heritage that may not be exactly like us, but are still with us, still part of our families, still individuals that we care about. And when I even think about it like this, but Greg is absolutely right. When these murders and the victims are starting to come out, and we're starting to see exactly how easy it was for this white guy to show up and kill gay Black men, young men in many cases, it was very clear that the security, the sort of lack of security, was in fact our lack of compassion towards individuals within our own families who were frankly just gay, and they're just left aside. I can anecdotally think of one person at my dad's church in Kentucky who everyone kind of like, oh, he's kind of sweet, blah blah blah, he can sing, but let's keep him in the corner because he's kind of sweet. But by 1998, thankfully, it was a lot different. And I got introduced to that church during Jeffrey Dahmer's time. By the time 1998 happened, and the only reason why I use that year is because that's when my dad became a deacon for that church. But it became a lot different. Now it's, oh, no, that's brother, well, let's say Johnson. No, that's brother Johnson. No, he's part of our church congregation. No. He's we love this brother. It don't matter who he cares about after this. This is our brother. We care about him. But to Greg's point, even in 1994, it was like, no, brother Johnson's kind of sweet. Just keep him over there.
All right. And I did. Yeah. I remember learning what that term meant and the questions therein, but yes, no. Did hearing that and was just listening to a Common song where he was saying that. Got a little aggressive, man. I like Common, but a little aggressive in that song.
Yeah.
So taking all of those thoughts, it brings us to, I may be reaching on this last one a little bit, but I want to kind of wrap it up with the 2000s up to now, a man named Israel Keyes. And I feel like he's lesser known. And it's one of those things. It's not a man that people know about as much about what was going on. And it may be harder to speak to. But let me tell you at least a little bit about him. He was raised in Oregon and Washington area and Idaho a little bit. Extremely religious family, right? Extreme religious right. Absolutely, type of people who are, talking about banking systems ruling the world, talking about shadow governments, all kinds of things, right? Also Christian originalism, which being the idea that, Jesus, it's really hanging on to white Jesus. Okay. And I'm not just talking about in the way that I might, even as a Jew, might occasionally see Jesus as a blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid. I'm talking about saying, no, Jesus was white. Like, that's not like, that's where we begin the discussion, right? Don't you dare even, actually quote the Bible to me and actually make quotes about his bronze skin. We're not even starting there. So he's raised amongst this, very domineering father, and starts, starts to act out as a killer, but it's still unclear why. He has a kill count that people don't even know. The fact is that people don't actually know his victims. He was caught and was very good, very manipulative, and excellent at stringing along the FBI, promising more details. But part of his promise was he wanted to be tried and executed quickly. He didn't want to be in the. He claimed he did not want to be in the newspapers. He didn't want to be. He didn't want to be sensationalized. He had a daughter. He was. I don't know. I can't remember if I guess he was married and then divorced and then was living with his girlfriend. He ended up moving up to Alaska. What I think. He almost sort of takes this amalgamation and all these things that are going on in the people who are thinking about past. He has sort of the random taste of Ramirez. He does believe himself to be bisexual, but is clearly completely conflicted over that fact, especially with his religious upbringing. He has military training like Dahmer. He may have killed when he was in the Mideast. He may have killed when he was in Israel, training with the army. He is such the epitome of this organized killer that he would constantly take flights all over the country, all over the place, and scout out potential victims, scout out places, and he would bury kill kits. He would bury weapons. He would bury, anything he needed. Often he would get so high off of the killing, he would then proceed to have to go and rob a bank to try and get the same adrenaline hit again, which would also then potentially fuel the cash he needed for what he was doing. He used the cover of being in construction. He had a small construction company, and I guess did some. But here's this guy. He did a little bit in there, now and again, in between killing people.
As you do,
as one does. Yeah. I think my favorite like random fact when it comes to burying guns, near the end of his spree, he was hanging out with his parents who had moved to Texas, because of course Texas, and are still in one of these fringe religious movements, right? All living way off the grid. And he tells him that he's left to go because he wants to go find some place to bury his guns. He actually fucking tells him that in this text message. And they're like, honey, come home. We'll help you bury your guns. Really? That is not like, no one in this fucking family is like, why are you burying guns, son? Right? That's not even the case. Taking it aside, he sort of seems to almost bring us into the age that we're in now. And I can't help but look at him and think about him. He's this super organized killer and the perfect stranger he studies other serial killers. He's using the internet, right? We have the information age. We have all these things that are coming out now. And it's almost like he's almost your worst case Facebook friend, that guy, that person who shows up on your profile and you just say, yeah, sure. Why not? Right. There's that randomness to it. There's this weird, interconnected disconnectedness, right? That I have a hard time even putting my finger on, but I was fascinated by him when I first heard about him. Also, interestingly enough, his behavior is so much of that of an addict, that he seems truly addicted to the killing. He seems to revel in all of it so much, but that he loses control. He is this ultimate controlled killer. As I say, he would fly to other locations. He would then rent cars and drive them hundreds and hundreds of miles to other states so that he could not be connected to it. He would bury cash. He would have cash on hand. He had all these things mapped out. He finally gets caught because he just randomly decides to kidnap, rape, and kill a barista at a local coffee shop nearby his house, right? And then he decides to try and pretend like she's alive. He actually sews her eyes open and sends a picture after he's killed her to her dad and to her boyfriend, and tries to get them to put money into her bank account. And he has her ATM card and he has her PIN. He then proceeds to use this ATM card, not only in Alaska, but also in the lower 48 in Texas. He goes down for a wedding. And that's how he finally gets caught, right? In the most disorganized way. Like something totally breaks and something totally brings him to the point of disorganization. So after that wonderful intro, let me kick it over to you there, Greg. How you doing there, Star Child?
Feeling all right. I would say, a lot of literature has been written, a lot of research has been done. A lot of people think, there's the cliche about a serial killer existing to balance out good and evil or some shit like that. Or, it's because our civilization is becoming more civilized. So there's less places for violent people like this to really express themselves. And so they're taking the form of serial killers. There's a lot of science, and again, subconsciously, do serial killers want to be caught? And if so, why? If we're going on what seems to make a serial killer tick, then actually that trajectory all makes sense. And is this going to be the new thing? Like someone comes out, kills, I don't know, 20, 30 some odd people, and then maybe even makes a presentation of being caught. That would be the kind of prediction of Oliver Stone in Natural Born Killers, the Gone with the Wind of serial killer movies, where it was, just as frantic and frenetic as we imagine the mind of spree killers and mass murderers and serial killers, where he kind of makes that point where it'll all be showbiz. someday. Like you will have these kind of